Savannah, I saw a second ago. Sarah is here, who's a student who hasn't worked on this, but she's great to see you here. And then there are many people who also, who we know or who we don't know. But it's a pleasure to see you. It's great to see Tim here. Hi, Tim. Give you a quick shout out. I'm here because over the past 3 years I've worked at Al Quds Bard College and have met many amazing people and engaged in really meaningful discussions with many of these. And we have been out in the landscape quite a lot, talking to different people. And it's good to be able to kind of present some of this work today to you in a kind of lighthearted and informal way. But when we speak of landscape in Palestine, we also have to do so in the context of the ongoing Nakba. And we have to acknowledge this history of erasure, not only as a history, but also as a present of ongoing struggles over land and landscape. And when Omar and I discussed where is goodness in landscape in Palestine, where under these conditions, under these devastating conditions that that each of us kind of brings with us in their own settings into this virtual meeting, where's goodness there? And Omar, to quote him, he said, "Goodness is to be found in the act of sharing."
Yes. So this is why we decided to foreground sharing in this performative lecture and make space for actual sharing with you, each and everyone here, we hope. We understand sharing in the sense of commoning, right? As a practice of struggle and our common struggle against settler colonialism, against capitalism, and against a neoliberal individualization of the mind and of the heart as well. And of course, against what we face as part of our common actions and our resistance at every and all scales. But I would, so we would really like, if there is something you would like to share with us, both in Arabic or in English, or in any other language, during the second half of this lecture, please do that by posting it in the chat, and we will call on you later. And I'm going to post this.
So before we turn to sharing, we kind of have to ask, what does it mean to translate? What does it mean to translate across language? What does it mean to translate across time and medium? And to translate in its most common sense means to translate from one language and carry across to the other. But the act of translation also implies translocation. It also means to foreground place and landscape as a matter of speech and vocabulary. It means to foreground the cultures, the ecologies, the intimate spaces we live in, and it means to bridge across space and context. And we think maybe this is also where you can kind of see a continuation from the first talk with Yifu and Ken on the intimacy of spaces and the different perspectives that these understandings of landscape bring with. So to perform translation means to inhabit the space of the in-between, mabain ubain. And to translate also means to inhabit that space in between past and present.
Sorry, there was something with the voice, but anyways. So to translate does also mean to me or to us or to, if you wish, is to inhabit the space in between absence and return, right? At least from the context where I came from. There is no landscape in Ammiya or Fusha Arabic. There is the word al-ard, and al-ard means the land, the earth. The earth that we cultivate with orange trees, zaytun and za'atar, right? The art that spreads in us and in which we spread. Al-Bilad is where we come from and where we go. It is bullets, oranges, and memories. The homeland, Al-Hima, is the one that one longs for and defends. And the word Al-Tabi'a means the nature that provides. Palestinian vocabulary voices an ontology of land as an intimate space of identity cultivation.
The images in front of you are taken from the Atlas Al-Ain, a performative archive of memories from below that we performed over the past 3 years. And it displays the olive groves, the springs, the landscapes, both in the villages and in the refugee camps that we looked at. And what we did during this project is that we met with people from this village of Al-Walaja, and we shared stories. We shared common stories, we shared different stories. And more often than anywhere else, we would meet in the living rooms or in the gardens of those villagers who participated in our performative atlas. We're often sharing shay, tea, we're often drinking coffee, kahwa, or eating a meal that was provided to us. And these acts of sharing, they opened up a space to also share common memories, poems, stories, songs. And it took place in these spaces that we would call al-madafe. That's the Arabic term that refers to one room dedicated to hospitality. About al-madafe, Alessandro Petti and Sandy Hilal writes, al-madafe is the part of the private house that has the potential to give different political and social meanings to the act of hospitality. It means, in effect, to turn private spaces, such as the living room, the private secluded garden, into social and political arenas. So the houses, these spaces of the in-between, the spaces of in-between translation, in between the private and the public, in between the landscape and the house, they kind of served as catalytical sites of memory production. One woman who we met in one of these spaces told us, Al-Quds, Jerusalem, was a market hub for the fruits and vegetables grown in Al-Walaja, its landscapes and its springs. And this kind of collection of historic photos that we collected depicts women carrying baskets of fruits on their head as they are kind of on the way to the market in Jerusalem, Al-Quds, to share and sell the food. The woman goes on to explain that Al-Walaja, its springs, its landscapes, colloquially would be called the fruit basket of Al-Quds, pointing to the importance of the landscape of the region, its springs, its common spaces, within the context of the larger fertile and arable land. And she concluded her kind of sharing session with a very short but meaningful sentence. The fruit trees are the pride of Al-Walaja. We grew almonds, figs, and oranges. Other photos that we collected and that we kind of translated show peasants loading the Jaffa-Jerusalem train line with vegetables and fruits at a time that the train would still stop in Batir and Al-Walaja before the Nakba.
Okay, I chose to collect some words and terms that Arabs used both in the past and the present to describe the land, right? And I will explain before a little bit about the word landscape. So the term landscape is mostly translated into Arabic as مشهد طبيعي or منظر طبيعي. The word طبيعي means natural. So both مشهد طبيعي and natural طبيعي. The term mashhad means scene or scenery, where it's commonly used to specify a certain take in a movie or a certain view of nature. The term mandar is originally rooted from the word nadara and is translated as the past tense of look in English, looked. So mashhad means scene and mandar means the past tense of looked. When we refer to a natural view, we use the word mashhad or mandar, view alone, without the word طبيعي, which is natural. So we don't say the natural view, we say the view or the scene. We say look at the view. We don't say look at the natural view, at least in practice, right? Arabic language is very rich in vocabulary. One might think that there are some words that have the same meaning in practice, which is true, but if we look carefully, each of these words describe a certain set of conditions. The example I picked from these words that I'm showing to you is two words that I am highlighting. The first one is al-ara, and this means an empty, exposed land or place in which nothing is hidden. Whereas al-khala word means an empty, exposed land only. Both words means the empty land and the exposed land. However, one of them implies the condition or the possibility for something to be hidden. And that's why the first word, al-ara, is used to describe the empty land during the day. The word al-khala, the second one, describes the empty land during the night. So there is different use for between daytime and nighttime. Because you can be hidden in an empty space during the night. Because darkness hides you, makes you invisible, and makes the space invisible as well. But you cannot be hidden in an empty land during the day. Can we move one slide? Thanks, Jens. You have some problems with your mic. Okay. In his poem called Al-Ard, meaning the land, Mahmoud Darwish, a Palestinian poet, describes how peasants, people, we dissolve into the land and cultivate, meet and celebrate. He says, وفي شهر آذار نمتد في الأرض في شهر آذار تنتشر الأرض فينا مواعيد غامضة احتفالا بسيطا.
وساعدا يشتد في النسيان ذاكرة تجيء من القطارات التي تمضي وأرصفة بلا مستقبلين وياسمين وأرصفة بلا مستقبلين وياسمين كان اكتشاف الذات في العربات في المشهد البحري في ليل الزنازين الشقيقة، في العلاقات السريعة والسؤال عن الحقيقة، في كل شيء كان أحمد يلتقي بنقيضه 20 عاماً، كان يسأل 20 عاماً، كان يرحل 20 عاماً، كان يسأل 20 عاماً، كان يرحل 20 عاماً، لم تلده أمه إلا دقائق في إناء الموت وانسحبت. يريد هوية فيصاب بالبركان، سافرت الغيوم وشردتني ورمت معاطفها الجبال وخبأتني. يريد هوية
What we hope, what we hope to see is that translating landscape in between Palestinian Arabic and English, the act of translating kind of decenters and refuses to articulate kind of pure mechanical, political or aesthetic relations as they are present in landscape, Landschaft, and an Arabic vocabulary of landscape decenters also the self. In Arabic, a word for landscape, though ontologically ubiquitous and as a discursive umbrella category, it doesn't exist, but precisely this semantic disambiguity in between the translations, I think, lays bare a cleft that points towards an epistemological formation of landscape through which colonial pasts and presents are produced. But rather than merely focusing and centering on this kind of impossibility of translation, we also understand the act of translating, and also the fragments that we share today with you and that you will share with us. We believe that those open up a space of possibility, a space that we can inhabit, that space of the in-between. And to translate also means to listen to the other, to listen to difference.
Okay, now we return to sharing. To translate does also mean to share. And we invite you to inhabit this place of translation and goodness with us together. We have already asked if you have anything to share to put in the chat, and we will call for you. But before, we have to share with you a picture that was shared with us by Iman. Iman Safi is here, and what we are sharing here is a photo that where she depicts a piece of soil and a branch of olive tree. But what we did is that we shared the conditions or the act of sharing itself. So Iman, Iman is originally from Palestine, but she was born and raised in Jordan. And before she shared this photo, she posed a question, and I thought it's good to bring this context to this with this image. She said, "I have some soil and an olive branch from the Bilad," and Bilad refers to Palestine, to the place where we belong and where we go. And she says, "Can I take a picture of them together and send it to you? Or should the photo be taken from inside the Bilad?"
I think if I can comment on this, I think what Iman points to in the question is really, really important, right? That's the kind of the question of landscape and whether landscape as identity, whether that exists and can be performed across boundaries, across borders, right? Because I mean, what Palestine kind of witnesses now is what, well, or what all of us witness now, the lockdowns, right? The different curfews and so on. Palestine has witnessed many different lockdowns, many different curfews over the years, no? And there's this question of whether this idea of landscape can also kind of, you know, be performed across borders. And I think that's a very, yeah, I think it's a beautiful thought and a powerful question that Iman asks.
I see Dania Mjalli. Dania, she would like to share a painting with us. Should we? Yeah, I think Jens, you should stop your sharing and hand it to Dania.
Diana.
Diana, sorry. Diana.
Now you remembered.
I'm sorry, Diana.
The waiting.
All right. Okay, there. Can you guys see a photo?
Yes.
Yeah.
A painting. Okay, good. So this is one of Sulaiman Mansour's paintings, a very well-known Palestinian artist. This is called Temporary Escape. Okay, so just a little, I want to give a little intro history behind this and how I deciphered it. So, as we all know, the settler colonial project in 1948 established a Jewish homeland in Palestine, which brought a lot of destruction of the material and cultural forms of life that were already existent in Palestine, along with destruction of land, cities, and villages, and with almost an expulsion of almost 80% of Palestinians. And you know, in the year 1967, this had extended to occupying more lands and more destruction. And around that time, a lot of males have been arrested and interrogated by Israel. So it was like a mass imprisonment of Palestine affected with intimate lives and relationships of Palestinians. A very important time of the year, 1987, Sulaiman Mansour and other Palestinian artists started a new art movement called New Vision. Okay, and that's where they decided to boycott Israeli supplies, leaving them to only able to use local materials and nature, such as mud and henna. So Sulaiman focused on the theme of land in his paintings. A recent one called Temporary Escape holds and encapsulated a lot of symbolism. I depicted this painting and I wanted to tie it with a Palestinian practice of sumud, S-U-M-U-D, sumud, and the interrogation and how sumud is encountered with colonial and power relations. The term sumud is very important. Okay, so the term sumud originated after the 1967 war and is defined as steadfast. And steadfast means to be firm, loyal, committed, and means to be firm and loyal and unchanging, sorry. Sumud, S-U-M-U, yeah, that's right, sumud. And so for example, if a Palestinian man was asked to leave his land or tortured for a confession in jail, and they would say, you're going to die if you don't confess, or you're going to die if you don't do this, yada, 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 it's all this power, okay? So if the man decides and says no, he is loyal to the land and he's true and he's practicing sumud, okay? And actually something very, very symbolic is the term, the symbol for sumud is an olive tree. So it's even more intriguing. So anyways, going back to interrogation, the power is, hello? The power of Israel is controlling and everything, and it's deceitful and manipulative, and everything being stripped from a Palestinian man, the land, home, etc. But yet the practice of sumud is the only thing keeping an imprint of Palestinian lands. Sumud keeps them grounded, and it keeps a way to defy the colonizers. It also is an escape and it's escaping regulative forces of control. The practice of Samad destabilizes the colonial order and its power relations. So looking at this painting, which captures a symbolic movement of Palestinian man, so referring to what I mentioned earlier, when I mentioned about 1967, almost 80% of Palestinians' land. So if you look at the mud in the photo, the dirt, the dry mud, the amount of it on the painting portrays that, showing at least only 20%, half a head above the ground, which portrays a practice of Samad, the only hope, the only string. It's minimal, but there. The only external string that holds Palestine. So to stay loyal and to have a say in land, for every practice of Samad a man does, the land responds, leaving an imprint. It's not fully taken. That's it, guys. That's me.
Thank you. That was very good. The term is also very very related to the whole history, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. No, thanks for sharing. This is amazing. Very, very.
You guys welcome. It's just another aspect of looking into land and goodness and how we stay grounded and how we make an imprint and how we stay, it's loyal, it's committed, it's unchanging. It's like no matter what's being taken, what's being stripped away from us, we still have that say. Even if this looking at this photo, it's dark as well too. So it's like that last string of hope. And if it's, I don't know, it's beautiful. It's very powerful. I loved it. Thank you, guys.
Of course it is. No, it's very powerful.
And I see the comment someone mentioned about what is the name of the new movement. The movement is called New Vision. The art movement is called New Vision, started in 1987 with Sulaiman Mansour and other Palestinian artists.
Mm.
Oh, I see. Someone responded.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Me
All right, thank you.
The photo also really, or the painting, in the previous panel between Yifu and Ken, the discussion was also raised about the desert as a category, right? And I think this painting kind of resonates with this notion of the desert somehow. But it kind of tries to subvert it, right? Like if you think of the desert as this kind of colonial category that's kind of rendered empty, empty and, well, it's emptied, no? It's an act of being emptied.
Exactly.
Terra nullius and so on. And there's something really interesting here because you can see these imprints of that body in that sand, which looks a little bit like it is like desert, no? I mean, to me, this kind of resembles the idea of desert. But you can see these imprints, like you can see that there is life, right? But it's somehow this kind of contrast between life and death. And it just made me remind of the conversation we had earlier. With trying to shift perspectives, right? Between center, periphery, empty, not empty, and so on. So I don't know. Yeah, this is a really beautiful painting. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Sulaiman Mansour. Beautiful. If there's anybody else who would like to speed up, you can share, you can comment, you can ask questions. We welcome any interaction at all.
Maybe I can jump in because there's so much that's really very fresh in my mind because I've been working on a book. Jala Maksumi is here with us as well, where we've been talking about the idea of landscape citizenships, about what it means to belong to a place and a people and ways of life and life worlds, rather than belonging to a nation, which is a more abstract thing. And one of the things that comes up in so many chapters in our book is the notion of translation, is that the process of translation, and I really like the fact that there's a sense of reaching out and bridging across in the idea of translation. And I think also that's there in the word attention. to pay attention is there's a sense in it of reaching out. So when we reach out, when we pay attention, that then allows us to make those acts of translation where a conversation takes place. And a conversation is fundamentally what landscape is. It's not a set of decisions that are made. It's not a border. It's a communication between people and place and time and climate and plants and fruit and everything. So I think it's okay not to frame a question in a meeting like this, but I just thought I'd throw that out.
No, absolutely. Yes, thank you. That's a really great comment. And in fact, that's how we came about to form this presentation, maybe. That's how we are thinking about the question, because, and allow me, Jens, to say this, sorry, because when first Jens and I, we were going to this, and Savannah and Diana and the others were participating in our project, a project that we, where we looked at Al-Walaja village, a village located east to Jerusalem, and we were looking at this water spring that was annexed by the Israeli occupation in the West Bank. And one of the terms, at the time, that was 3 years ago, and one of the terms that would always be present in the back of my mind, like they would say it all the time, is landscape. And to be honest, I had no idea what does landscape mean, and I couldn't really identify with it. And a year ago, I posed Jens many questions like, what do you mean by landscape? I have no clue about what is it, but I could tell from the context, what are you referring to, right? And it was when we started deconstruct the term, right? So that, to me, it was this rigid term that describes a specific area where you look, you stand and you look. So it centers that you look, right? It's your vision, right, to an area, or the depiction of the place. On another note, happened only like 2 weeks ago. We asked a friend of ours from Palestine, and he's a photographer, and he doesn't speak English, and we told him, can you take a few photos of the landscape, please? And then he came after 4 years after, he came to us and he said, well, I wandered 3 days trying to search for landscape and couldn't find it. Can you please? And so it builds on, and that's actually the picture he shared with us eventually, right? After a long discussion about what do we mean, what does it mean? And it's really should be the language that also we use to communicate between each other. So language is landscape in a sense, right? That we inhabit and we see the in between our ideas. So it's not the translation to me then was a question of I should look into the translation of landscape in Arabic, but not to look for what I expect to find, but what is really practiced there. And I use it as an opening for my own history, but also other histories. So that was a great comment. Thank you, Tam. Thanks.
Jala, you want to say something? Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to. First of all, thank you for an amazing session, because I'm so happy that finally this issue of translation and cross-cultural transportation of the word landscape is opened, especially in the Arab world. It's amazing. I wanted to share with you an experience I had. I was working in not very far from Palestine, in the extreme south of Lebanon, in a village, Iblis Saqi. And in that village, I was working, it was a commission as a landscape to protect the forest. But after I finished, I was so sick and tired of explaining landscape. I decided I will just talk to the people to see. There must be an understanding. It is amazing what I found. There were 4 landscape-related categories of vocabulary. Place-related, relating to geology, like Bahsasa is where there is gravel, Ramliya, where there is sand, Marji. So, and there are words related to function, where they would thrash the wheat, where they would relate it to water features. So it's incredible. And I really believe we need to look to our rural culture and rural heritage. And this is very rich in Palestine. I mean, in fact, they are the bastions of the culture, because first of all, they haven't been corrupted as in cities. So it is and I think that could give us a very, very good insight into a contextualized conception of landscape. But I agree very much with what Jens, you said, that really the space between the translation, the back and forth between the translation and not just the landscape, but between those terms, local terms, like you were showing, Omar, of fala, khala, mashhad, manzar. So I think it's a very big and long process, but I think I'm so happy to see that so many people are engaged in that.
Thank you, Jala. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jala. Of course. Yeah, we should allow, though, right? It's our responsibility to allow these discussions to take place in between translation, right? Hopefully we can. I guess no other people want to share anything, so there is nothing in the chat for me. Yeah, so and I think we have already exceeded the time. I think.
I think it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If anybody has anything to say or add or any question, please. And it would be really nice to see faces as well. Oh wow, there are a lot of people. Thanks for attending, guys. Alex, thanks. Nice seeing you.
David, do you want to say something?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting ideas. I spoke last week with Omar. I was just thinking about, I was there last year, and we walked for 3 days with a group of Palestinian social workers and UK social workers. And it was in a landscape, but it was a sense of a place. It was a sense of, and there was almost like a triangulation between, people from the UK, people from Palestine, and the location, and that sort of triangularity gave it a real sort of sense of purpose, I think. And we reflected on it further when spending sort of time with the Bedouin, who have, an incredibly strong sense of place, and is very similar to sort of sheep on the fells, if you like. They are hefted. They have that place where they belong. It's their environment, I guess, And so I'm just really interested in reflecting on the overlap of the ideas you've talked about tonight and my experiences last year. So it's been really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure to see you here. Thanks also. Yeah, the Bedouin question in Palestine and the southern Palestine and Negev is, of course, another level of landscape and deportation and colonization as well. Yeah, but thank you for being here.
Omar, I know we said we wouldn't do it, but can we? Should we? If there are no more questions, maybe we conclude with Ahmed Kabur.
Okay. Yes.
Beautifully. Okay. Thanks everybody for joining. I don't know if there's anything Shita wants to say, but no.
Oh, no, it's okay. I think we can wrap up after.
Yeah.
But thank you everyone for coming and a nice discussion. Yeah. I'll post the link to the other events on the chat. Yeah. Okay, we can wrap up after your conclusion.
Yes. Thanks, Jella, for what you shared. Very good.
من أول ما شفت النور عم فتش عليها، أنا بقطع كرمال بحور وأغفى عايديها. هي حلمي والخلاص يا ناس، ضووا للشمعة إن بكيوا أطفال الحرب بتحولها الدمعة دمعة. مين بيتحمل العذاب؟ عتاب نظرة عينيها. مين رح يفتح للباب الشمس تشرق عليها؟
ما بدها غير نقطة مي حتى تزهر أرض البور. بيكفي تفتح كفها شوي حتى القدس تشعشع نور. ببحرها مركب نجاة حياة لا تعيشوا فيها. بيكفيها صوت القهات ومحمد درة بيكفيها. مين بيتحمل العذاب؟ عتاب نظرة عينيها. مين رح يفتح للباب الشمس تشرق عليها؟ مين بيتحمل العذاب؟ عتاب نظرة عينيها. مين رح يفتح للباب الشمس تشرق عليها؟